Yeah.
Did you say hi to us today, Ramos? Did you say hi to us today? Hey, Mark Ramos, how are you? Happy New Year. Good to chat with you. Fuck. I mean, like, we've just been on this thing.
Say anything.
He hadn't said a word. Yeah. Well, I was just wearing Blummer out. Welcome into the bleachers. Good. Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy freaking New Year, dude. Isn't this great? This is super great. I'm going to take on the role. It's a whole new year. It's a whole new Blum. Welcome to Bitter Blum. Bitter Bleacher Blums. Spit that out.
Say that 10 times
it's been
fast.
A hell of a freaking start to the year, if you ask me, pal.
Bitter Bleacher
Yeah, this
Blums.
is the Bleachers. Yeah, for all of you who have stayed with us, we welcome you back to a new year. It is 2022. However you want to phrase that, I've seen different memes about it. I've heard Taylor Swift friggin' way too much already with the it's 2022. Give me a break. All the trending noise and memes and stuff like that. But to all of our regulars, we welcome you back. We know that we've got a strong contingent, but if you're new to this podcast, this is Bleacher Blums. My name is Geoff Blum, 14-year Major League veteran. I've got my co-host, David Tuttle, across the United States out there on the left coast enjoying himself. He spent some time in the minor leagues, was also an All-American and just a Team USA guy and all-around good dude. But we're going to talk a lot of baseball. We're going to talk a lot of sports. Well, we can't talk much baseball, dude. This whole lockout situation is perpetuating itself through into the new year. And as far as we know, it's had ramifications now. We always assumed it was going to be, on the baseball field and affect pocketbooks of millionaires, billionaires, and to be honest, thousandaires, because, that's probably the bigger thing is within Major League Baseball and the union, you have those who have established themselves and have multi-year, multi-million-dollar contracts, and then you have the younger crowd. The guys, the newbies, the rookies who are breaking in, and you're trying to have them hold the ground because they're only making a couple $100,000. I know in GP terms, that's a ton of money, but in the earning window of Major League Baseball, it's not that much, and it's trying to keep that solidarity and keep that union intact to fight against the owners. But it's been an interesting start. We'll get into that a little bit later. But Tuttle, how are things going? I have a tendency to ramble, and I'm a little bit. People on Twitter like this Blum. They like the sassy, pissy Blum. And to be honest, I'm starting this year a little bit like that. My wife has already yelled at me several times for having a negative attitude. But, of course, that's why Tuttle is on this podcast. He is the eternal hope on this podcast. David Tuttle, what's up, man?
Blummer. Wow, I didn't realize, I do chat with you. We do text, but a lot of time, as you know, tone in text is tough to fetter out. I have seen your Twitter, I guess, rants, for lack of a better word. But, it's weird. I have a friend from high school. And I talked to you, I guess, I don't know if it was offline or online, but, I lost a friend recently about 2 months ago. And so we kind of rekindled with a bunch of friends, and she sends out an email every year that says, all right, let's just have a word of the year, so now I've translated this to my kids. Let's have a word of the year. You were going to laugh at my word after your little rant here, but my word of the year is positive. That's my word of the year. So we're gonna be at odds.
How many times can we do that? We've been saying that since 2020.
No,
positive.
Hey, I've had different.
It keeps getting better and better, doesn't it?
No, I've had different words. It's about what we can control. So I'm just gonna try and keep a positive mindset and a positive attitude. That doesn't mean I don't get frustrated. That doesn't mean I don't rant. I will say the people that we know on Twitter, the high leverage people on Twitter, like the Joe Rogans of the world and people like that, they tell you never read the comments and never respond. They basically strafe. They strafe the...
That would be a good resolution for me.
Right. So they pop the thing on Twitter and then they get off. They post and they get out. They just strafe and lay the groundwork and get out because you start reading and engaging. And we're all guilty of it. We all feel the tension from others and, obviously the feedback. And let's get back to what we were talking about, the lockout. The lockout's really frustrating. I was listening to something yesterday, and they said that this week or last week they were talking about non-core issues and having a discussion, listening to somebody talk about what the non-core issues are. They're like, well, these aren't the things they're kind of peripheral. It's like, so why are they all getting together and talking about non-core issues? But I think we've said from the beginning, as long as this doesn't affect spring training or, the beginning of the season, I think we're going to be okay. But it does seem it does seem like nothing's being done, but it just, everything always comes to the 11th hour. And it just, I don't understand why we all wait for that. So now they're talking about non-core issues. There seems to be no urgency, and that's really on both sides. And I think you mentioned the solidarity piece is, if I were a player, I don't know. I mean, I guess you got to take advice from your leadership, but I mean, these are how these negotiations go. I think we know how they go. And I think by March 1st, they'll probably have the lockout all resolved and the deal's done, and we'll be playing, and everyone will say, what were you guys all up in arms about? But if every other business ran like this, you'd be like, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, let's get this done. So I wish I had the answers. We have talked about this. This is a little, what do I want to say? A disclaimer. Obviously, Geoff Blum, being an employee of the Astros, is very limited in what he can talk about from a lockout perspective.
Wah, wah,
wah, wah, wah. But we can talk about Rob Manfred, I believe, and we can probably talk about Ken Rosenthal, who was let go from the MLB Network. And I think that that's a really good place to start this podcast, because we've talked about our veterans, right? After every podcast, like the freedoms that we have in America. I've been listening to some, please don't shoot me, but I've been listening to some podcasts that I trust about vaccination status and all that. And one of the guys I was listening to got kicked off Twitter. And it's kind of like, you know what? He may have a different opinion, and maybe what he's saying isn't even correct, but you can't kick him off Twitter. Like, it doesn't make sense. And the Ken Rosenthal thing falls into that category for me. And so, Blum, I'm going to, like I said, that's the disclaimer. I know we're not allowed to talk about contracts and MLB and the Players Association and how that's going. But let's dig in a little bit to Ken Rosenthal and what we know about freedom of speech in America. How about that?
Oh man. Well, hopefully, your Twitter idea kind of runs against the idea of freedom of speech, because it's a freedom of ideas, it's exchanging of ideas, and isn't it up to the person to decipher what's real, what's not, what they can take in and what they shouldn't take in?
Yeah.
That's a whole nother animal for a whole lot of other podcasts other than ours,
is
trying to get into that political Twitter fight realm. But as far as baseball is concerned, and I think it does kind of run into that idea of what is the freedom of speech in baseball. And I didn't know this until Ken Rosenthal got fired, that you actually have to be careful what you say. And the interesting thing about Ken Rosenthal is, and I don't think I'm going to shock anybody, especially in the Astro realm of things, is that Ken Rosenthal, for me personally, I have never had a bad interaction with him. I've disagreed on ideas. I've disagreed with articles he's written, and so is my dog.
Your dog hates Ken Rosenthal too. No. I know you're going to jump back. I know you're going to jump back in, but what I was going to say about that is that's the crux of this issue. Like you said, you're allowed to have discourse. You do not have to agree with everything that Ken Rosenthal has ever said, and I know that's where you're headed.
Yeah, and that's part of the discussion. And I've actually had conversations where I've run into Ken. Funny enough, I was actually in Boston, and we walked back to the hotel together and had a great conversation where I had the conversation where I said, this, that, and, this is how I feel. Why'd you write that? He explained his side, which is great because it helps me understand where he's coming from a little bit more. And knowing that he was a writer for Major League Baseball, he was a commentator on the MLB Network. So I knew his bias was a little more towards the ownership side, towards Major League Baseball side, not anti-player, but it definitely had a tinge of, I'm on what side he was on. That's why I was kind of flabbergasted and shocked that he got actually fired, or not. He didn't get fired. He did not get renewed by Major League Baseball. And a lot of the idea was because he had some harsh criticism of Rob Manfred, who is the commissioner of baseball. And that's what threw me for a loop, because I know for a fact, if you kind of lined things up and said, how many articles did Ken Rosenthal write pro Major League Baseball, pro Rob Manfred, even to the idea of some of these lunatic rules that Manfred comes up with, Ken Rosenthal kind of protected that and encouraged some of those rules. And then all of a sudden during the labor negotiations, Ken Rosenthal kind of says, Rob Manfred's a stick in the mud. He's kind of, sabotaging the game kind of thing. And then all of a sudden he's gone and he doesn't get renewed. And that's what I think kind of blew everybody away was, he was so protective of the game itself and what Rob Manfred was trying to do, and then one or two articles of negative maybe content against Rob Manfred, and all of a sudden he's not renewed. And that blew me away, because there's never been a stronger advocate, whether you agree with him or not, of a guy for Major League Baseball other than Ken Rosenthal. I think, underlying everything that he's ever written, he has been pro Major League Baseball, and he was a positive influence, man. I mean, a lot of the stuff that he did on Fox, the bow ties and the charity, everything was a positive towards the game. That's why it kind of threw me for a loop to see him get racked the way he did, and it gives you an idea of the dictator type ship that Manfred's maybe trying to run the game with.
Yeah, I don't know if it's dictatorial, but I will say what you just said really kind of resonates, which is I think, you mentioned already about the lockout and what you're allowed to say and what you're not to, and the Astros were very specific, and Major League Baseball is very specific, and a lot of times they don't want all these opinions circling, and they don't want the waters kind of muddied when this is really outside the realm. These negotiations are going to happen with lawyers and some of the players and all that. So that makes sense not speaking. I work for a company. They tell us, for example, we're colorectal cancer screening company. We're not allowed to use like poop emojis, right? Things like that. Like, I know it sounds funny, but
dang, what a loss.
I know, but it's very, because you're not making light of it. It's a strict, I don't know if it's strict, but like, what the rules are. But I think to your point, if you slant one way, if you're kind of like the vice president of, marketing, or you have a leadership role, and more often than not, you're sticking to the company line, and you're, as you said, it was more than sticking to the company line. He was actually progressing those ideas that maybe some of the players didn't believe in and some of the fans didn't believe in, to say, hey, look, this entity isn't this evil empire you think it is. This is the reasoning behind why they're doing what they're doing. These are some of the thoughts. Like, he was really foundationally explaining, and as you said, maybe on their side for a good reason. So then when you say, hey, like, hopefully, even on this podcast, we were joking about you're starting the new year with this fiery, Geoff Blum. I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm going to stick to the positivity. I'm going to worry about things I can control. Let's disagree about that, and let's challenge each other, and let's keep each other honest about, come on, you're being too damn positive, Tuttle. This is just, this ain't going the right way.
I'm going to break you down.
That's right. So, and that's fine, but I welcome that. And I just think if you've had, like you said, a history, judge my character by what I've done and what I've said over the timeline and over the length of time. And then when I tell you, hey, Blum, you're a stick in the mud, or I really believe that you guys are, steering the ship in the wrong direction, then that's okay. Let's have that conversation. And maybe they got offended because he said it publicly, and there's all these other things that can get involved in that discussion. But I just think what he said wasn't that egregious, in the sense that he didn't say that they're doing anything illegal. He didn't say that they're, this is their negotiation tactic. I've said it on this podcast. Taking down the player's name, images, and likeness from MLB.com is really, it's like childish. That's what you do in like third grade. Like, you don't like this kid, so you just cross his face out on the class picture.
You draw a mustache.
Yeah, you're like
a weird goatee on.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, I wasn't, we don't like that kid, but we're not, So I just, it's frustrating to see that that's where we're going. And as I mentioned at the outset, we're talking about freedom of speech, these type of things. Maybe he got a letter that said, hey, Ken, you can't talk about this stuff, and he talked about it, and they just didn't renew him. But it's just not. It doesn't seem like it's the right action.
Yeah, and if Rob Manfred's if he's frustrated by what Ken Rosenthal has said, imagine what, does he read the other comments around the world? There's plenty of people outside of MLB Network that have just been absolutely railing on him.
Yeah,
and. I think what we're trying to say, and to our point, is, shouldn't you encourage the conversation? That's something we started this podcast on, the idea of, even if you're listening to us and you hate us and you disagree with us, we're creating the conversation. We're not going to sit there and rebut, or, we're going to rebut, or we're going to try and have the conversation, but we're not going to discourage anybody. I think it's wrong to discourage anybody from having the idea that they can't voice their opinion, because I've had plenty of conversations, and obviously I'm passionate about the game. I'm passionate about my ideas. I'm lucky enough to have a microphone in front of me on a daily basis to be able to have those ideas. But, I've run into situations where I haven't gotten shut down on Twitter, but I've actually had some pretty good conversations on Twitter with Dodger fans, with Yankee fans, with, people around the league where they have an argument. And as long as you're coming back and having the conversation in a civil manner, I think that you should encourage that and be able to have that because, self-reflection is sometimes something that you can use to make yourself a better person. And I think it's shutting down those voices and only hearing what you want to hear doesn't make you a better person.
No, I mean, if you come into a discussion and you change your mind, I'm more likely to be like, hey, that guy's open-minded. I mean, most people come into a discussion and they just want to make you see their point. And if you don't see their point, then they walk away. I mean, they're not there to have a real discussion or change their mind. And I think that's an unfortunate place that we've gotten to in society in general. I mean, things aren't black and white. Everything is nuanced. There's nuance to everything. The Antonio Brown issue that we saw this last weekend. I mean,
I wrote that down too. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's nuance to it. But we heard some stories that it was about money, and it always comes down to money, which is so funny because everyone's like, well, was it about his ankle? Was it about the coaching? No, it's money. He wanted his incentives paid up front. But that's nuanced, right? There's stuff in the middle. So I think people that hated what he did still don't like him. They weren't like, oh, I see his point. I mean, I just think we kind of...
It proved a preconceived notion to a lot of people, I think is what it did. It just reinforced people's ideas or, it created a new one. But a lot of people who had those negative reactions already had that preconceived
Exactly.
notion.
And that's where I'm saying we are all that way on most of these issues. So like we said, and I think that that's the nuance here is that like you have disagreed with Ken Rosenthal and some things that he's written before. And again, he works for MLB Network. I've listened to Rich Eisen on his podcast, and he works for the NFL Network. You're definitely going to have a slant. I mean, you have an Astros slant.
I'm going to be Astros.
Yeah, you played for 5 teams or whatever, Expos and Astros and Padres and Diamondbacks. You played for all these teams. You have an Astros slant now. You worked for them for 9 years. You should, and you're employed by them. And that's part of what you get paid to do, but I think people should understand that and know that. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a discussion with you, and that doesn't mean that you were a big critic of the Astros during the scandal. You were a big critic of the problem was that the Astros got singled out. And I think we've beat that horse, a million times. But the reason I bring it up is that, I think sometimes internally you can still be your own critic, but still have the opinion that, look, these aren't horrible people. There's other things that were involved. And I just think that there's nuance to everything, and we've gotten in this black and white world, and it doesn't bode well for Major League Baseball and or this negotiation with the Players Association and ownership when somebody within their little network speaks up or has an opinion that's contrary to what they believe, and boom, they're out. So, I mean, I hope that works for, all these guys are lawyers, but I hope it works out well for the Players Association. And, initially we were saying, hey, let's March 1st, we'll have this all wrapped up. And so everybody can go to spring training and get ready. And, now we'll wait and see. We're not 100% sure about that, I guess.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Speaking of opinions, man, the Hall of Fame and voters and baseball writers, the Hall of Fame is starting to narrow down. And we're starting to figure out who's going to become a part of that Hall of Fame. And I actually had the opportunity to vote a little bit. We talked about Ryan Spader on Twitter, at Ace of Spader, if you want to follow him. He's also got a website, The Ace of Spader, SPAEDER.com, and he's got a ballot harvesting going on over there,
ballot
if you will,
harvesting,
since we're talking
about.
But he's only asking ex-Major League players and current Major League players, and he's got an interesting ballots up there. I finally put mine up there. I'm number 51. I had Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Todd Helton, Jeff Kent, Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner, and I forgot to put Andrew Jones on there. I just loved Andrew Jones. But if you want to go check that out, that's great. As far as the players poll that he has going is very eerily similar to what's going on with the Major League Baseball writers. But I was just kind of curious. Do you have any thoughts on what's going on with the Hall of Fame voting, as far as if we're talking about opinions and things like that?
I just wanted to. I missed what you said on
social media too.
I missed what you said about Andrew Jones.
Oh, I forgot to put him on my ballot for whatever reason. I sent off the email, before I put Andrew Jones on there, because I'm actually, I read through, I made a comment with my ballot. And I kind of said, the guys that I voted for were players that I chose because I felt like they played like Hall of Famers and who had the numbers to back it up. And I really feel like Andrew Jones is one of those guys too, because I focus so much on what he did defensively, and there's really not a metric for that. I think that he helped. There were already Hall of Fame pitchers on that pitching staff with the Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, guys like that. But, their numbers were enhanced by having a guy like Andrew Jones in center field. And I just feel like Andrew Jones, after writing that statement saying guys that played like Hall of Famers, then I looked at his numbers statistically, stolen bases, the RBIs, the home runs. He kind of adds up and puts him into that upper echelon of center fielders for me. So he would have been my seventh guy.
I would agree. And I have 2 points on that. One is that I mentioned this offline before, but Baseball Reference, which we've mentioned on here before, baseballreference.com has everybody's statistics. Tuttle's in there somewhere, I think. But baseballreference.com has all these things, and they have a Hall of Fame metric that takes out none, did you use steroids and that? There's no emotion, no anything like that. And the metric is so funny because I mentioned Barry Bonds is really high on that metric. Stan Musial has like the highest number, I think, but A-Rod's high on that. And the reason A-Rod is higher than Barry Bonds, in my opinion, is exactly your point, is he played defense. A-Rod was a shortstop and a third baseman, and he was a good defender, at least when he was playing in his prime. I mean, we hate A-Rod, that goes without saying, but the reason that he's higher on these metrics is exactly what you said, and if we relate that to Andrew Jones, let's be honest, guys that play defense, I mean, I'm looking at now in this game, like Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is way more valuable than a lot of guys because of his defense. They move him around. He has a great arm. He can play defense. Every pitcher, myself included, love to have a good 9 behind him or a good 8 behind him. And we've talked about, Maldonado all the time, like the tools of ignorance. I mean, the guy can bat 180 with 20 home runs, and guess what? He's one of the most valuable guys on the team. So you have a great catcher and a great defense, and guess what? That elevates, all of your numbers and your team. And I think that, obviously the metrics will bear that out. But guys that have played defense and had good offensive numbers are certainly higher. And I think that's why Pudge Rodriguez, and I can think of all these other guys that were significantly better because they played offense and defense. And I think Andrew Jones is certainly in that category. And then the second point I wanted to make on that was Aaron Rodgers made a big he didn't make the stink this week, but a writer came out.
This is really an interesting story.
And this relates to what we're talking about, the Hall of Fame. This Hub Arkosh guy came out and said, and what everybody commented on was, anyway, he basically said he wasn't going to vote for Aaron Rodgers for MVP because he lied to the team and he was unvaccinated and he was disingenuous, and all his off-the-field stuff means that he's not going to get my MVP vote. But the criticism was, and the feedback was, that's what people do. They just don't say it out loud. And look at Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Does this sound familiar? Like, now Barry Bonds is trending at like 80% because it's the 10th year. And now people are like, all right, we punished him long enough. So the writers know that they're punishing these guys, but they also they know that the Hall of Fame would be different without Barry Bonds or maybe Roger Clemens or maybe Curt Schilling or whatever your opinion is. And our baseball writer came out and said, look, I will vote for Curt Schilling, not because he's a political idiot, but because of what he did on the baseball field.
Idiot.
Oh, and that was the other metric. Gosh, jumping all over. But that was the other metric in that Baseball Reference Hall of Fame number was postseason got rated higher too, which is why Schilling has a good number in there. So if you performed well in the postseason, A-Rod had a lot of postseason at bats, more than Barry Bonds, right? Because Giants versus, I know. I'm just using A-Rod as the metric based on no emotion, just the numbers. We know
it falls into that category too for me because I actually wrote it in a part of my commentary that I had on the thing. I didn't vote for Alex Rodriguez. I probably, I don't know if I ever should or ever will, but it's personal for me.
Are you punishing him, Blum, or are you punishing him?
I'm not punishing him because I don't actually have a vote, but in my own mind, yeah, I'm trying to suppress the idea that he's a Hall of Famer. And part of what pisses me off about Alex Rodriguez is I played against the guy when he was not on steroids, and the dude was a freaking beast.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I loved everything about his game. I thought he was a freak.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he did that, and I was like, dude, he just pissed away every idea I ever had of him.
Right.
Because he did the steroids and did it,
Well, he was also a jerk. I mean, we've talked about Lou Piniella on here before. Like, you know what? Lou Piniella didn't do steroids, but he's a jerk, right?
Isn't that what Hub Koresh or whatever that guy's name
Hub
was?
Arkash,
That's what he said about Aaron Rodgers. He goes, he's a bully, he's a jerk, I don't like the guy, nobody likes him.
Right.
And Aaron Rodgers is like, I've never met the guy.
Yeah.
How does he know who I am or what I am?
Exactly. And so
judging him off of vaccination, I mean,
Right.
that goes back to our previous conversation.
That's right.
Unless you have the conversation and understand where he's coming from,
Yeah.
or maybe, a liability he has physically with I don't know. There could be an infinite amount of excuses, but judging him on the fact that he didn't take a vaccination and maybe, he jacked around the rules a little bit, judging a person off of that after not knowing the guy is kind of brutal, and it skews the vote. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at. What you crushed when you were just talking is, we have humans voting for humans.
Yep.
And if you can't go the baseball reference way and draw that line and make it just strictly what's on field, the human element's going to be involved.
Right. And we all know the human element is involved. It's just like I said,
time.
the reason that Hub Arkash got a lot of heat is he said it out loud. And I will say, and I wasn't intending on talking about Aaron Rodgers, but I think it relates to exactly what we're talking about with these Hall of Fame votes as we watch. January 25th is the deadline for this year, and this is Barry Bonds' last year, and he's trending at 80%. Either the writers feel like they punished him long enough, or all along they knew he was a Hall of Famer, and now it's just going to – the challenge I have with that is, with Barry Bonds getting in, if he finally gets in with the steroids thing, kind of now all of a sudden it's like, all right, maybe A-Rod does get in because they know his numbers are there anyway. It'll be interesting. It's not a slippery slope. I've said this before. I think Barry Bonds is part of the game and part of the lore, and he was a fantastic player. And people think it's a crummy argument to say he was a Hall of Famer before he did steroids. I mean, based on what you just said, A-Rod was a Hall of Famer before he did steroids too. Yep. But, it'll be really interesting. As you said, humans are voting for humans. And I do think there must be some, look at Andy Pettitte. He apologized. Andy Pettitte, of all guys, I played against him. Really Christian guy, family guy, just a mild guy. And he came out and said, yep, I did steroids. I was like, that guy did steroids? Like, out of all the people, I would be like, no way. And he said, look, I was injured. I wanted to come back. He apologized. Nobody ever brings him up. And nobody crushes that guy ever, because we all are looking for
humility.
That's right. You show humility, and we all look for people to apologize and be contrite. You're like, yeah. So anyway, so we know that those guys are getting punished, but I think it was really interesting this week how the NFL tied into exactly what we're talking about with the Hall of Fame votes, because we know that these writers, these old crotchety writers, we've talked about analytics, and scouts are old crotchety guys too, these, oh, well, this guy doesn't look like this guy and he doesn't do that. Some of the, we have to, they're human, right? They're human. And you're holding grudges this year. That's kind of that's your MO.
That's my New Year's resolution. Hold grudge.
Yeah, there you go. Grudge. That's your word. Mine's positive and yours is grudge or grumpy or whatever. But anyway, I just think we're all human, but I think you hit the nail on the head with what you said, which is, these are humans voting for humans. It's really interesting right now, as you mentioned, your Hall of Fame ballot and how things are trending. But I just, it's weird all along. I just thought Barry Bonds would get in, and now he's trending that way. It'd be really interesting if he wasn't, if he had to get voted in by the committee. And,
oh man.
It's a really unusual circumstance, but I have a feeling he's going to get in this year. And that means, I don't know, is Clemens, did you see what he's trending at? Is he going to get in too?
I did. So as far as the players are concerned, the only two players that would be voted into the Hall of Fame, according to Ryan Spader's retired and current Major League Baseball players voting, the only two players that would get in would be Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
Yeah. And that's because this is their 10th year on the ballot. Is this so predictable though? Jeez.
It is. It is. And I'd have to pull up I think it's Rob Thibodeau. There's a guy on Twitter that has
that's what you're saying. Yeah.
that has his own. He's actually doing the ballots from the baseball writers, which is really it's a fascinating and interesting read because he does such a good job.
It's like watching the vote on if you ever watch the presidential election, they get that guy with the algorithm like these are the counties and then this
projecting.
Is so Thibodeau's that guy for the all right, this is the writers and the Northeast writers are saying this and they're trending in this way and now he's trending in this, right? Isn't it the same kind of it's an algorithm. It's not exact science, but
yeah, so it's Ryan Thibodeau. I apologize, but as far as he's concerned, or as far as the writers are concerned, it's David Ortiz, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens as it stands today of April 7th. I mean,
April.
January
Holy smokes.
7th.
You've held grudges for 4 months already. Jeez.
Yeah, but those three guys are would qualify to get voted in, so it's kind of interesting. God damn it.
That's all right. We have a producer. We have a producer, and
yeah.
You can edit that out. You know, it's funny because we've had this Hall of Fame discussion now for the last 2 or 3 podcasts, and Ortiz was on our list to get in. I said Bond should get in. Clemens is still iffy for me because he's not contrite, but now he's on Twitter, so maybe we should vote him in. But I mean, I'm joking, but this is what we kind of thought from a trend line perspective. You know, Schilling.
Yeah.
Schilling
but
has.
You're right. You called it.
Yeah, but Schilling has another year or 2, right? Or is this his last year as well?
Oh, I haven't investigated.
But
that,
I think he has another year. That's what I'm saying. I think I think they're just trending in different directions. But anyway, I don't mean to put you on the spot. You're looking at the internet. I have the computer right in front of me. I could do the same thing. But I think it's trending for all of us.
See what years they are on it. It'd be a lot more typing for me. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I thought it was kind of funny that we're seeing that late push for Roger Clemens to get in the Hall of Fame. And, their numbers, obviously, if we just went strictly on numbers, he's definitely getting it. 7-time Cy Young Award winner. But it's kind of interesting, after the Larry Walker, Tim Raines situation online with social media kind of pushing those guys to get voted in, and they eventually got voted in. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of interesting to see Roger Clemens get out there. It's kind of interesting to see maybe getting that, that fan base pushing in the right direction to continue him and trending towards that Hall of Fame bid. But he's definitely got the numbers to get in. But again, it comes down to humans being human, and I think that might be the theme of this podcast for us is humans being human. It's egos, it's ideas, it's opinions, it's bias. I mean, there's so much going on. And in order for us to have these opinions, we've got to do it with our sponsors, and we're going to take a quick break for a sponsor right here. What do you want to bring it back with, buddy?
That's fine. I found Schilling. Schilling asked to be last year. He had one more year, which is this year, to be left off the ballot for the 10th year. Of course, he's still on it, but he wanted to be left off because he couldn't get in at 60. He had 71% of the vote last year. So we can bring it back with that. And then I do have a Weddle Tuttle say, if you want, I don't have a whole lot of other stuff if we don't want to. I guess we could talk about the college football playoff, Alabama, Georgia.
No? I wanted to talk about the portal.
Oh.
What the freak is going on?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. That's way better.
What do we got? College football free agency?
Dude, it's incredible. It's great. And the guy, Dylan Gabriel, went to UCLA, and he was going to start classes, and then he went to Oklahoma when that guy left. It's like, what the? But it's great for them if you're a player.
And now that I'm an Arkansas fan, it's like 2 of their DBs are leaving to go to like somewhere else too. I'm like, what
no. You're going to have to you're going to have to donate more money to Arkansas. Your daughter got a scholarship, so you're not paying full price.
I know, seriously.
So
just $15,000 a year.
We're gonna see Plummer with a Pig Suey sweatshirt, and you're gonna be in the owner's box if there is such one. A booster box. I'm wearing our old.
Exactly.
So let's bring it back with the Schilling number, and then we can get into the transfer portal.
I'm gonna bring it back and throw it to you for the Schilling number since you have it.
Look, I got the old school.
Have fun editing my dogs out of this, Mark. Love you. Look at you going with the bright orange.
School,
Yeah, buddy. All right, welcome back. We appreciate our sponsors, and we appreciate you getting through that to listen more about this. And we actually have an update. During that break, Tuttle did some homework and got online, and we got a little update on Curt Schilling's status on the Hall of Fame ballot.
Well, the internet is so amazingly easy. I wish we had this when I was in college. Of course, I needed to go to class.
Could you imagine
probably.
how much better we would be? Such better students.
I would have been a much better student. I'm going to go with that.
I would have been at least a C+ student.
I'm going to stick with that story. That sounds good. Yep, I would have been a better student. Mom, are you listening to this? So Curt Schilling last year got 71.1% of the vote for the Hall of Fame, and it was his 9th year of eligibility. He did not get in, so he has to be removed from the ballot. He just doesn't want to be on the ballot this year. The funny thing is, he's been getting written in, and I think he's still trending in there. People are still voting for him, but he, he's a very politically motivated guy, and he just thought, hey, take me off the ballot for my 10th year, because if I couldn't get in last year, when I'm only up against Clemens and Bonds essentially as my peers.
Yeah. He's even had enough of himself.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. That's a great way to say it. So yeah, 71.1. So this is his last year as well. So it'll be really interesting. We have Ortiz, Bonds, Clemens, and then potentially Schilling, and Scott Rowland is trending pretty well too. So it'll be interesting to see how this class goes, and be really interesting for Scott Rowland to get in. If only 5 guys get in, and you go in with Ortiz, Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, and Rowland, who doesn't have any sort of PED attachment to him, be like, all right, he'd be the third, the odd man out there. Be like, all right, great, yeah, but it would be a fun class to go in with. I mean,
oh my gosh, yeah. It would be a really fun class. I mean, some of those speeches would be highly entertaining. You know what's crazy about Curt Schilling is last year he finished at 72, just over 72%.
Oh, I thought it was 71.1, yeah.
Yeah, well, according to Ryan Thibodeau's website, I went back and looked at last year's final standings, and he was at 72%.
Wow, he was close.
And then this year he's at 57.4%.
Yeah. See,
so he's taken a big slide backwards, man.
Maybe because he has to be taken off the ballot. I mean, they have to write him in or something. I don't know what the ballot looks like. You're not a voter either, but if they took him off,
writers being human, they probably said, "All right, screw you," and just basically left him off. So I'm sure that probably influenced it a little bit. Hey, dude.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna finish one. The odd thing is, he's so. Well, anyway, so politically motivated, like he has to be taken off. He won't get in this year, and then he'll just spend the rest of his life saying, hey, I asked to be taken off. I can't believe I didn't get in. Like the conversations are just, it's just too much. The Hall of Fame, you talked about humility earlier, and then we'll transition. I just, I mean, the numbers are the numbers. They are what they are. You got your number retired in your high school, and I was elected into my high school Hall of Fame. It wasn't something that I campaigned really hard for. It was something that just happened. Kind of.
You were that good.
Ethereally. I mean, I don't even know if I was that good. It was just something that people felt the need to, recognize, which is great. I mean, it's not something you need to campaign for. I mean, I'm sure it was a great day. We've talked about that, last year or 2 years ago. But I mean, it's not something you need to campaign for. If you need to campaign for it, then, you should probably pack it in and go elsewhere.
You heard it here. If you got a campaign for your Hall of Fame bid, buy yourself and try and push it, and then maybe you don't deserve it.
Bingo.
I'm with you on that. You know what's crazy is that, college sports transitioning real quick and taking a hard left turn. Getting into college sports has been fascinating watching, the bowl season unfold with some of the COVID issues, teams being written in, end zones being erased, rewritten, and erased again for a new team that comes in and plays. So that, Omicron has taken over sports again, rescheduling of the NBA. But the NCAA has been fascinating to me just in the bowl season, because we're seeing 2 SEC teams now that I'm an SEC parent. Watching, 2 of these powerhouses get after it. I think the 2 best teams are in that national championship game. I don't know if you feel the same way, but Alabama and Georgia are 2 very good teams. And I think it's kind of interesting, too. I believe it'll be the 3rd time that they play each other. And so there's always that familiarity breeds contempt, and being in the SEC and competing as often as they have, I think it's going to be a fiery matchup. It's going to be a lot of fun to see if Georgia can adjust to what Nick Saban does with his athletes. But at the same time, a word keeps coming up and a situation keeps coming up in a lot of the articles that I've been reading, and it's fascinating to me, and I didn't realize it was going to spiral as crazy as it has been, because we've talked plenty about coaching transition, coaching moves, how coaches can move at a whim and get out of contracts and leave players at institutions where they were recruited and beloved, and now we're starting to see this thing called the portal. There is a player portal now in the NCAA where I basically feel like it is collegiate free agency. There are players now that can put themselves in the portal. Who is it? Campbell, the quarterback for Oklahoma?
Caleb Williams.
We know that Caleb Williams, is in the portal. And what I found fascinating about that, and what kind of piqued my interest about it is that he goes into this portal and kind of throws himself out there like, hey, I'm available, but at the same time, I'll go back to Oklahoma if I can. So if I don't get any other suitors, I'll be more than happy to go back to Oklahoma. So that's where it kind of intrigued me a little bit. I don't know if this is good or bad for football, but are we teaching these kids to, default on commitments, or what are we doing here?
What are we doing? That sounds like an Eric Mangini quote.
It should be in The Office, Kazansky or whatever his name is. What are we doing?
That's right. But it's crazy because Caleb Williams did that, and I think he thought he could go back to Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel, who was a really successful quarterback for Scott Frost with the other guy that blew out his knee and went to Florida State. Yeah, well, Frost is there now, but at UCF when they were there. Dylan Gabriel is a UCF guy, went to UCLA. Just this Monday, he was going to attend his first class and play for Chip Kelly at UCLA. Caleb Williams at Oklahoma entered the transfer portal. Dylan Gabriel entered the transfer portal and went to Oklahoma. So I don't know if Caleb Williams actually has the opportunity to go back to Oklahoma if he wants. And you think Caleb Williams would be a great fit at USC because he just was with the coach.
His coach?
Yeah, that's right. So he's going to follow his coach over there. So, I mean, it is wacky. It's crazy. The other guy that cracked me up, or, you were just talking about being an Arkansas dad. You're not there yet. I know your daughter's going to attend next year, so just hold off on that. Next year, you will be a full-on SEC parent.
Well, it's going to be a different team.
Right, but Nix, the quarterback for Auburn, who started as like a redshirt freshman, has been there for 3 years and, had a game where, he played well against Alabama, and they were saying, oh, this guy's the next whatever. And then they've had 2 mediocre seasons, changed their coach down there. And he's now transferring from Auburn to Oregon. But when you think about it from a program perspective, if you're a college coach and you have all the pieces in place, we look at now, let's go NFL to NCAA, and all those guys, if you're a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, it's like, look, we've got our guy. But it's yes or no. And I heard this yesterday. It's a great point. Who I got to give credit, but I can't remember who said it. Anyway, there is no mid-level NFL quarterback contract. There's either a high level or an introductory level, like your first deal. So that's why Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, people like that, like they're in the top 12 quarterbacks in the NFL. They are, and that's why they get paid $40 million. Now with Mayfield, he's on that cusp of like, do we or don't we? But it's always a black and white question. It's not like, you know what, he's okay, right? We can get him for like $25 million. It doesn't work like that. You're either getting paid $10 million or you're getting paid $40. And I think the same thing with the NCAA. If you're trying to run a good program and you have Alabama's defense or Georgia's defense, and you have some skilled wide receivers, all you need is an experienced quarterback. We saw it in the NCAA basketball. Yeah. Like either in basketball, you're Calipari and you have the 5 greatest recruits of all time on one floor and you got to mature them over the year, or you're playing Loyola of Chicago that has 4 seniors and a junior that move the ball and know how to play like lights out. Virginia won it that year the same way. So if I'm a coach, all I need is that piece. It's the head of the monster. Hey, would you be willing to come to my school? You're a 5th-year senior grad guy. You're running the same offense here. We want you over here. Why wouldn't you take that guy? And then to finish that point, this week they were saying Harbaugh is interested in going back to the NFL possibly. And they're saying he had to take a pay cut last year. He won 44 games in the NFL and took a team to the Super Bowl. Like, he's a legit coach. And he did a lot at Michigan this year. If I were a college coach and had that opportunity, I mean, Urban Meyer just torched that for so many college coaches. But Harbaugh, because he has success, he has that little trapdoor back in. Would you want to be a college coach? We've talked about their freedom to move. But would you want to be a college coach when now it's not just recruiting, but now you have to recruit the 70 or 90 dudes that are on your side and going, hey, are you happy? What about you? You're second on the depth chart. I'll move you up there. Like, you're recruiting all the time. I would be like, hey, if I'm Harbaugh and I get an NFL job, like the Chicago Bears job or something, I'd be like, I'm out of here. I'm just going to go back to the pros.
Dude, I would take that with Fields as my quarterback.
Right. But I'm just saying that's the part that bothers me as a coach. Like, yes, they had the freedom before. So as a fan, the loyalty, like, hey, Nix was our quarterback at Auburn. Now he's at Oregon. Do you become an Oregon fan or do you just hate the guy? And then as a coach, hey, I have to be recruiting all the time. Oh, I heard this rumor. I heard that rumor. That would be too much. So they're going to have to, I know they opened it up because of COVID, but I think that's probably going to get shut down at some point. I don't know what you think about that.
Oh my gosh. Well, we know that we talked about dictatorships earlier with Major League Baseball. The NCAA is definitely one of those entities that is not afraid to wield its power. And I think that they are going to start to recognize this. And once the COVID era is over, they're going to adjust to it a little bit and maybe put some stipulations in there that say you've got to be at a program for at least 2 years before you enter that, that portal. But I think the idea also is the idea of coaching in college has changed a little bit, because I know when we were coming up and up until maybe in the last 6 or 7 years when coaches started to move around so much, there was really the idea of college sports were where you grew up and where you matured, and where a lot of the coaches in, whether it be female or male sport, when you were coaching these collegiate athletes, you were molding human beings. You were teaching them to be human. You were teaching them to grow. You were teaching them to become great athletes, good students, and good people as they moved on. I think that was the idea, whether it be matriarchal or patriarchal. It was an idea of that you were that surrogate parent that was continuing the education in sport, in athleticism, and in academics before they took on this crazy thing called life. And now the idea is, where can I get the most money? Where can I have the biggest impact? Where can I continue my name and continue my legacy? And maybe the idea of legacy is gone too. And once that legacy leaves, then there's no dedication from the player to stay at an institution either. And it does make it tough. You touched on the fan base. Ultimately, that's who's going to start piping up and going, dude, why am I wearing this Arkansas Razorback, football T-shirt if I'm cheering for a guy this year and he's gone next year? There's nothing to look forward to. So the NCAA is going to step in eventually, but it's just fascinating to me that some of these better players are treating it like free agency, and there was an article, like you said, that we've read, that it's another recruitment era.
Yep.
Now there are coaches who look into the portal and go, oh, I want that guy at my program. Right. He would really make us better.
Yep. And they're looking on their own sideline. That was the other thing. And I'm going to sound like grumpy old guy, which I've sounded like before on here. So
that's what we're talking about. Give me some grumpy Tuttle.
But it's frustrating because, now having your daughter getting ready for college, my son's, about to enter that whole like application process and look at schools, and, he has some ideas, but that was kind of the place you kind of shoved your kid off to become mature, right? They learned how to pay bills. They learned how to drink beer, possibly, ignore their parents.
Hey,
there was that.
You and I did the same thing. I learned a lot in college.
That's right.
And it wasn't necessarily in the classroom.
No, that's right. There's that freshman, sophomore year of college when, the bird gets out of the nest and they're kind of learning, and, you've built this great foundation for your kids. This is what college was for. These guys come in now already mature too. Like, I've been to 7 quarterback camps, and Peyton Manning knows who I am, and Trevor Lawrence comes in, and you've got an entourage of people when you're a 17-year-old quarterback leading modern day, like the Heisman Trophy winner, Bryce, whatever. What's Alabama's quarterback name? I can't.
Young.
Anyway. It's just so funny how the stuff escapes you when you're trying to make a point. But anyway, when you're the quarterback at modern day, like Matt Leinart was, or the Alabama quarterback, all these guys, are you looking them up? You are.
Yeah, go ahead and keep going.
That's
it's
fine.
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young. I knew I got Bryce right. How about that? But Bryce Young, when you have Matt Leinart, Bryce Young, these guys are at modern day. They don't come to your program like Alabama, like, all right, here's your knapsack and your duffel bag. Like, good luck over at college. They come in like, all right, which college do I want to go to? Do I want to play for Nick Saban, or do I want to play for Kirby Smart, or maybe even Chip Kelly here locally? And what do you think, agent, advisor? What do you think, dad? What do you think, like, marketing
advisor
firm?
In quotations.
That's right, advisor. Thank you. But I mean, that's funny because I told you I worked for an agent after I finished playing baseball, but we were advisors when we were watching high school games. Yeah, we're not an agent. I don't sit next to the dad and talk to him the whole game. Like, anyway, it's just a really interesting. So I think that's the other part of this transfer portal, or the disparity, is these kids come in at 17, 18. And they already have the entourage. Like, I went to, you and I played in the area code games. I went to college, and I was just like everybody else. Yes, I got a scholarship, but me and the other 5 freshmen had to rake the field and, like, do the laps and like pull all the equipment out. Like we had to do all the stuff as did you. And I'm, that's kind of the grouchy old man, grumpy old man stuff. It's like these guys come in already like touted, and that's why it's hard to have humility. Hey, at 17, I led, modern day to a state championship or a national championship. Who wants me? Who wants me and this team of 20 people and my advisors and my family? And I'm going to pay for, I'm going to pay for their house when I hit it big. That's a lot different level of maturity. And I give them credit too. Bryce Young, I mean, dude, the guy's super mature. He may be more mature now than I am now. 30 years ahead of me. I mean,
yeah, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I believe that some of these guys, they're almost too mature too early for some of these, enjoying the fact that they are badass on campus and enjoy being an idiot and making mistakes,
right?
Man.
Yeah. Just not on Twitter.
I definitely did.
Yeah, and we did.
Yeah, just
and
don't
we
do
learned.
It in social media.
That's right. Yeah, we never had hazing parties for the baseball team. Anyway, is there a statute of limitations on that? Yeah. So Blumber, let me transition to one last thing I wanted to say. We're just, dude, we haven't seen each other in a long time. We're just fired up today.
I know, we got a lot of catching up to do. It's okay if we let this one go a little bit. It's just more work for Mark.
There you go. Yeah, which is fine. He's had a couple of weeks off. I mean, he did put the highlight.
Look at him
together.
eyeballing us right now.
Yeah, that's
Damn
all right.
Keep the producer happy.
Yeah. So this isn't really a segment-based podcast anymore, but the What'll Tuttle say? This week, it's really hard to remember back this far, but when Minnesota played their bowl game, they were up big. I don't know if you remember. The Minnesota coach came from Western Michigan, I believe. He's the row the boat, PJ Fleck, row the boat, and all that, and he has the oars and all this stuff. I watched that game. It was the only bowl game on. It was before Christmas. I was so impressed. I want PJ Fleck as my coach for my kid or whatever anytime. Every time there was a play, and I watched the whole game because I noticed it, and they never mention it in the comments or anything like that. I bet we could YouTube it or look it up, and I should have done that before this podcast. The Minnesota players all hand the ball to the referee. Like after every play, every friggin' play. I've never seen a team do it. I see guys flip it to the ref. I see the guys look for the umpire and hand him the ball, or they throw it, or they just throw it on the ground, or they put it down. It was a conscious effort. Every single player on Minnesota handed the ball to the ref. I mean, like hand to hand, like you were shaking their hand. It was unbelievable. And I was like, that's good coaching. I mean, in the heat of the game, to be able to keep your wits about you, like the guy was frustrated, he didn't make it on a third down, and now it's fourth down or whatever. The running back would walk over and hand the ball to the ref. I was like, that is the kind of coaching that you want your kids to get, and I think it bodes well. I think it would go to the Major League Baseball. I started thinking about this in the higher level. It's like running out ground balls. Yeah, you got fisted on a ball. It rolled 10 feet. Run the friggin' thing out. Like that's take it out on yourself. You're pissed, I'm going to run really hard. And you've seen guys do that, and professionals certainly do that. I was overly impressed with such a simple gesture. And then I started watching. I was in the second quarter. I'm like, are they handing the ball to the ref every time? Yeah, they are. Third quarter, yep. Receiver's out of bounds, finds the back judge, hands him the ball. I was like, it was awesome. I was like, I've never seen that in a program, and maybe it's like me, again, old man, like I'm impressed by that. Like, Alabama doesn't hand the ball to the ref and they kick the crap out of you. But it was impressive, man. So PJ Fleck gets a tip of the cap, and I don't know if you've seen anything like that, if there's a corollary, but it was impressive.
No, but that goes back to what we just talked about with the idea of coaching in college is helping these guys mature. Yeah. And I do think that there is a certain amount of freedom, since we're talking about freedom, there's a certain amount of freedom in discipline.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are consistent in your actions, whether it's going well or going bad, I think that makes you a better human being, and it makes you a little more adaptable to situations. And one of the things when I always go out and speak to, whether it be an organization, a corporation, or a high school, is the idea of in your failures, embrace the failures. And the reason I want to embrace the failures and hand that football to that referee is I'm going to be the same guy when I go out there and hit the grand slam, or the guy when I break off a 25-yard run for a scoring touchdown. I'm going to continue to be the same guy. And I think it develops an expectation of consistency, and that's the one thing lacking in humanity these days is that consistency.
Yep.
And I think that's what that creates, both in good and bad situations. No matter what I've done or what just happened, I'm going to hand this football. I'm going to show the respect to the referee for his job. And I think more or less, and what I always felt is running out of ground ball shows respect to the game, and it shows respect to the opportunity you are playing in this game, which is a luxury. You know, this is a privilege to go out there and play those games. So why would you disrespect that privilege that you've been given? But I think it's awesome. I think it does speak to the old world, the old guard, when you do recognize things like that, because those are the subtleties that a guy like you or a guy like me would appreciate, because we've seen the good, we've seen the bad, and we just want to be, you know, when we show up, we want that person to understand that no matter what is going on, whether it's grumpy-ass Blum or happy-ass Blum, it's still going to be the same dude at the end of the day. And so, I mean, that's just the attention to detail that I think some of us look for when we're watching it. You know, it's like that in golf when they show the respect and look to the guy next to them. Is it my turn? Is it your turn? You know, there's a certain respectability in doing that, and there's a certain amount of honor. And you know who probably noticed it the most is that coaching staff. And why wouldn't you try and just be a little more courteous to that not coaching staff, but to the
ref,
the officials?
That's
be
right.
a little more courteous to the officials. Maybe you get that call going your way too.
I'm teaching my daughter this now, and your daughters play volleyball, so it's a little bit different, like with the net and everything. You know, I know very little about volleyball, but obviously the violations, you know, that happen at the net, whether you touched the net prior or whether it was, you know, all that little stuff. But in baseball, I'm teaching my daughter in soccer. I said, look, you're a 12-year-old soccer player. Go to the referee. If that girl knocks you down or she's doing it, and just say, hey, look, she's tugging my shirt. She's holding me when I'm trying to make a run. Yeah. And just say that. That's all you have to say. Like, hey, watch them tugging my shirt. Guarantee. I mean, I tell her all the time, you guarantee you get a call or two, just a foul call, and that's fine. That's all you want. And you and I did this, you know, throughout our professional careers, even in college, because college, those umpires, we did not have like, I mean, it was volunteer work. I mean, those guys got paid, but the NCAA refs over. And I mean, the San Francisco State game or the USF game was the same as the Cal game and the Stanford game, and they were all important to you. Guys. And you were like, yes, I got this guy behind the plate today because he was good to me and I'm good to him. Like, you know, it's just anyway. It's humans judging humans. Bingo. Yep. That's the theme of the podcast, right? I mean, it comes back, but anyway, the PJ Fleck thing I just looked up, the ball is the program. Those are the signs they have around their thing, and they're big on turnovers and protecting the ball. So there you go. You don't throw the ball, you don't drop the ball, you don't lose the ball. You hand it to the ref and you move to the next play. So, but you nailed it. I mean, that's a variation of Jocko Willink's discipline is freedom. People think like being organized and disciplined means, oh gosh, you're strict and you don't have any. No. If you get up every day without your snooze alarm, you brush your teeth, you floss your teeth, like that discipline creates the freedom to be who you are and what you want to do. And I think that's a great little nuance to what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And that's what happens when you get on this podcast and talk about it a little bit. And Waddle Tuttle is always good, not going to be so subtle in what he says and bring up some excellent ideas. I'm just going to finish off this podcast with a little rant of my own and just giving some insight into the reason why I'm so freaking bitter to start off this 2022 year.
Give it to us, Blum. Give it to us.
Yeah, bring it. Is the fact that I went into the Christmas break with eternal hope. We talked about going to Florida and going to Disney World, the happiest freaking place on earth. And guess what? I ran right into the teeth of COVID. I put myself right in the bullseye, and guess what? I wore it. Myself, my wife, and one of my daughters, we got COVID. Of course, my daughter, has a headache for a day and a half, and she's like, I'm fine, and everything's great. Corey wears it. She's on the mend. I am on the mend. I sound 100% better than I did about 3 or 4 days ago. But I took COVID on the chin. You know what is funny? It's a good thing we're doing this thing remotely because I think I'm 10 days in and I tested positive again. So I'm just waiting for this thing to go away. But I took a Z-Pack. Z-Pack knocked out whatever was going on. But it was just a really severe sinus infection. But it took the joy of Christmas away. It took the joy of the New Year away. My kids weren't around me. I had a bunch of touch-me-nots in the house. It sucked. My dogs, you heard them barking already. They were annoying. Everything was annoying, and 2022 can only get better. as long as I get rid of this Rona thing and get the CBA out of the way and all this junk. But that explains some of the bitterness. And if you've been following me on Twitter at Blummer27, you're coming to the harsh realization that it is Bachelor season again. I don't know if you noticed this, Tuttle, but I watched the opening episode of The Bachelor. So please follow me at Blummer27, and I will give you plenty of updates on The Bachelor, because that's where I'm at in this godforsaken, COVID-ridden lockout situation that I'm in, is that I'm now watching the freaking Bachelor. Damn it.
I had you pegged as a Joe Millionaire guy. I keep seeing that, so the ads for that, but no Joe Millionaire.
That back? Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, Joe Millionaire's on the air again, so maybe
you know what I did like was the Amazing Race. We should do the Amazing Race. Tuttle and I, we need to petition for the Amazing Race.
Let's do it, brother. Hey, so I thought the way Corey posted that, and your lovely wife,
follow my wife at Corey Blum Design. She's always throwing me under the bus. Yeah,
she had you on the couch, and sometimes it's really hard on Instagram. I don't have the sound on all the time. There's different ways to get, and I'm like, what is? And they spell your name, by the way, when she does the dictation. It spells your name.
When they do the dictation.
I love that. It's like,
that's my alter ego.
There you go. But that's who's watching The Bachelor, is your alter ego. But I thought you were happy to be watching The Bachelor again. Is that not the case?
I actually was, man. Dude,
okay,
I took down notes. I have notes.
All right. Well,
but
we're going to have
to those.
Oh, well, next podcast. Here we go.
Yeah, stay tuned.
That's known as a tease, even in the podcast industry. We have a tease for the next podcast. That's all we got, I believe, right?
That is it. That's going to do it for Bleacher Blums. Obviously, a lot of catching up to do, some great topics. And again, we are all humans being human. So show a little humility, show a little grace in life, and it'll go a long way. And continue the conversation, for crying out loud. That is one thing that Tuttle and I will always encourage, no matter if we have the same idea or differing ideas. And, even if Mark won't talk to us on our own podcast, we want to encourage the conversation. We appreciate everybody out there who is a first responder, EMTs, policemen, firemen. We appreciate everything you're doing. We know Colorado's going through their issues with all the fires and things like that, but we just pray for your well-being. We thank you for everything you've done to put yourself in harm's way to make us better as far as a community is concerned. And of course, all of our military, we appreciate you, those home and abroad. We already got the first responders. What about essential workers and
teachers?
Teachers, yeah, teachers getting back into the mix in this Omicron era is kind of sketchy, but at the same time, we appreciate the effort and the adjustments you're making. Doctors, nurses, everybody out there, we greatly appreciate you. Thank you for listening into the Bleacher Blums. Make sure that you share this podcast. Spread the word that Bleacher Blums is starting off the new year aggressive, shall we say.
Aggressive. That's the word.
Yeah,
that's the combination.
That'll be the appropriate.
Aggressive.
Yeah. But continue humans being human. All right. Yeah. Tuttle, take us home.
Hey, just going to say a few things. This isn't political, but about the Omicron thing is not, the anti-vaxxed people thought they would spread this. So hopefully, I mean, like you said, you seem pretty asymptomatic, but it's a mild thing, but that's going to be the challenge, is like you said, for the teachers and all the people we were talking about, first responders, medical professionals, is that this thing is spreading, and that's why the flights are getting canceled. It's a staffing issue. So I'm unfortunately scheduled to go to Orlando next week. I'm sorry, not next week, the week after. And that's where you got it. So now I'm nervous. I'm like, why would they put us on a flight to go out there? I don't know. Maybe my flight will get canceled.
I'm the vaxxed. I'm the masked. I'm that guy. And I
Yeah, I know. I'm vaxxed and I'll be masked if I fly out there, but I just think,
what do they say? Hands up, elbows in.
There you go. Hands up, elbows in. So there you go. That looks like a boxer for me. But anyway, so obviously take care of yourself, stay healthy, quarantine if you need to. But, we're all going to have herd immunity soon. This Omicron has been a mild variant, but also a very spreadable variant. And that should bode well for society in general. Maybe this getting back to normal thing is good. So, if you're over the age of 45, please get screened for colorectal cancer. And we always encourage you, even on some of our merchandise and logos, to get after it and believe it.
Believe it.
There's
I have
Mark.
something to add.
Oh, good.
Just kidding.
Yes. Marcos, bring it.
After he's like pushed stop
no, it's
record.
recording. We got this. Say it.
I know. Okay.
No, you know what? I'm just going to end it. I'm going to say, Hey guys, I have something real quick I wanted to
Oh,
say.
there you go. That's going to be great. Hey, I do want to say something quick.
And then he gone.
He go. That's your favorite. He go.
So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and hit the bell so you can get notified when we post new videos.